So, patch 6.2 is bringing in a new event system to the game. It was initially reported that there would be 7 different kinds of events, and that roughly one of them would happen from noon Friday to noon Monday. The only ones that we knew about were Time Walker Dungeons, but as of the most recent update to the patch 6.2 PTR, we actually have a much better idea of what this system is going to look like. Of course, being on the PTR does mean that this stuff is all subject to change. In this video, I'm going to go through the actual facts of the new system, and then I'll talk a little bit about my opinions on it and why I think that there may be a few issues. So first of all, we have got an Apexis bonus event. I can barely contain my excitement. According to the text on the calendar, Apexis crystals will drop from mobs at a greater rate during this event. We don't actually know if either the patch 6.0 or patch 6.2 dailies will be affected by the increased drop rate though. Next, and probably more interestingly, we have got the Burning Crusade Time Walker Dungeons. You can queue from level 71 upwards, and the loot will scale to your level. At level 100, that equates to item level 640. There is also apparently a daily quest which gives you a single 680 bit of gear, though I haven't actually seen that on the PTR yet. Now there's also a separate Wrath of the Lich King time walking event. It's the same as the Burning Crusade one, though you need to be level 81 or higher to access it, and the gear and all that stuff is, the exact same in terms of item levels. Now there is also a new one called the Arena Skirmish event. This will cause skirmishes to give triple honor, and similarly there is a Battleground event which causes BGs to give triple the honor. Next we've got the Draenor Dungeon event. This causes heroic and mythic dungeons to give reputation with the Draenor factions. And finally, there is a pet battle bonus event, during which the pets will gain triple experience from fights. So I'm sure that's thrilling to everybody. In terms of availability, it's a little bit different to what Blizzard said a while back, but definitely in a good way. Currently on the PTR, timing is not based on weekends. Events come in pairs and they last for a few days. So for an example, from Thursday to Sunday there is an Arena and Time Walker Dungeon event going on, and then from the next Wednesday to Saturday there's a Wrath Time Walker Dungeon and an Apexis bonus going on. So all that stuff is quite good, and it would seem that our original fear of things like, say, the Time Walker Dungeons only popping up once per month are pretty much put to rest. They do look like they will be rather frequent. Anyway, now that you know the facts, it's time to give my 2 cents on the topic. I'll quickly go over the positives. I think obviously people like rewards, and maybe that will drive some more engagement in the game. And if you want to, say, grind out a specific thing, then this will help. If you want to get into PvP quickly and get lots of honor gear, again, this is going to help you. If you want to gear up an alt in 640 Time Walked or Time Warped gear, I think that's what it's called, then this will help. But I honestly don't think this is a particularly inspired system overall. In fact, I do think it's rather cynical, but anyway, let's just dive into it. I'm going to first go through the events and what I think of each one, and then the actual system itself. I'd say the more interesting discussion will probably be the stuff about the system, but I think it's important to cover the events. So, the pet battles actually are not half bad, as at least they provide an okay entrance into that content. Still though, they are of a limited appeal, so I can't see them driving that much engagement. Now, the dungeon event is a tad odd to me. Sure, the rep that's added is a cool bonus, and hopefully it will be more fun than grinding mobs for hours on end to get your Draenor reps up. But what they're essentially doing is removing functionality, adding it back in, and telling us that it's a special feature. Those of you that have been around on the channel for a while know that I didn't really love the idea of encouraging people to, just be constantly queuing for things all the time, and that I do think world content is king. But this is essentially putting the Cataclysm Tabard system and Mists of Pandaria champion system back into the game for reputations. Sure, it's going to be handy, but it's not new and it's not exciting. I'd rather, honestly, just have the championing system from Mists of Pandaria back, with buffed rep gains, so it's a little bit faster than just a tiny bit every day, and then perhaps that with some other forms of gaining rep. Perhaps you could do that via garrisons or a bit of world content, whatever. Now, the Arena Skirmish bonus event is, I think, great for getting a character some quick honor, especially if you've got a half-decent friend, but ultimately, it's just honor points. That's a currency that most PvP players, from what I can tell, don't really care about past the first few days of gearing at the start of an expansion. It just seems a bit pointless, to be honest, and I don't think it's going to drive that much engagement from the people who really are into PvP. And honestly, in regards to the Battlegrounds event, well, my points are the exact same. great for getting in at the start, but I don't really think it's going to be particularly exciting for the people who are really into PvP. Next, the Apexis thing just seems a little bit odd to me. It's encouraging people to do a kind of gameplay which just isn't fun, but hell, with there being a new mount in 6.2 that costs 150,000 crystals, I suppose you'll need it. I guess just going over all of these, most of them don't seem of that much relevance to a main character. If you are a main PvPer, then that stuff with the honor isn't really going to matter, and your PvP gear will be better than the gear that drops from the Time Walker dungeons. If you are a PvE player, then, like, again, that dungeon stuff isn't really going to matter to you, and, like, maybe it'll be great for getting into, like, on the ground floor, sort of into PvP. And that's the one bonus, and then for all groups of players, if you want to get into pet battles, it will help. But again, I just don't think this is really of a terrible amount of interest to people's main characters, and that really is where I think Blizzard should be looking. Rather than alts, which, yes, are important, they need to make the character, or the experience of your main character, be really good. I just don't think this really adds to it. Next, I suppose what really gets to me about this is how darn cynical the whole system comes off as. It directly reminds me of the time, around 9 months after Siege of Orgrimmar came out, when they started doing Valor and Black Prince reputation boost events. This was a measure to drive engagement in a time where the game was going through one of its slowest periods in history. Warlords of Draenor was not really anywhere on the horizon, we knew it would be a good few months off, and it had been 9 months since the raid came out with no interim patch in sight, so they needed something to get people to try to play the game. But right now, in the middle of an expansion, it just seems like an odd time to put it in. It, again, just seems cynical, like it's just designed to drive engagement. And really, like the Garrison missions and Legendary Quest grind, it just feels like another retention mechanic, and they come off as being really cynical, and honestly, I don't think they provide a great deal of fun to players. What I think is better is really good content. String me into paying for your game from month to month because the content is amazing, not by just throwing in sort of cynical little carrot and stick things like this. It just kind of gets to me a little bit. Also, yeah, this system doesn't really make the gameplay more fun. Perhaps with the exception of the Time Walker dungeons, as they are new and shiny. But overall, this system isn't really new content. Sure, you can perceive getting more Apexis crystals per mission being fun, but at the end of the day, you're still doing the same missions. And the same thing applies to the arenas, the dungeons, and the battlegrounds. The shiny allure of the triple rewards will disappear, and you'll be left doing the exact same content. Bit of an issue. Also, could events like this not be some sort of really badass thing in the world that's cool, that truly feels like an event? What if, say, the Burning Legion, they send a detachment to a certain part of the world, and for a few days, that part of the world is invaded. Maybe it gives you a few quests, some rares, a few treasures, maybe a story mission, or even a world boss. They could have a few different ones of those going on. Maybe try to make the world feel a little bit more dynamic and a bit less static. That would be an actual event. Or perhaps what if a super hard boss that came, that would just sort of roam the whole world of Draenor. It would crop up for a few days, and it would require players to band together on a server-wide scale. Sure, that might be tricky for some, low-pop factions and things like that, but stuff like that overall is what creates really awesome memories that make the game feel alive. I don't think that seeing a currency boost makes the game feel alive, and honestly, all of these boosts, they're the sort of thing that happens in a darn free-to-play game, not the world of bloody Warcraft. It's really a bit depressing. Also, there's a psychological issue here, in my opinion. If somebody knows that, for an example, in a week's time they will get double Apexis crystals for the same amount of time, are they likely to do an Apexis mission now? Like, if I know that I'm going to get so much more efficiency in a week's time, I just won't do the content now, and I'll wait. Similarly, if you know that there's going to be a Battleground event next week, why bother doing Battlegrounds now? Because spending an hour now will lead to 3 times less honor than spending an hour during the event. This might de-incentivize people from doing bits of content outside when the actual boost is applied. People do love to focus on efficiency, myself included, and perhaps this system will shape players' choices in terms of the gameplay that they do in an unhealthy manner, and that could be an issue. Also, finally, I think when gauging the response to this, Blizzard just need to be careful. Player feedback generally does lean towards what gives you the most rewards in the least time. So sure, it may drive engagement, and it will probably look very good on Blizzard's internal statistics. But the question they need to ask themselves as designers is whether the players that are shown by these great statistics of high engagement, are they truly having fun? Or are they just being lured in by a massive shiny carrot? If the latter is true, and they're being lured in by these great rewards for a bit of content that's kind of boring, yeah, it's going to look great in the short term. But in the long term, will it be good for the quality of the game? And more importantly, will it lead to burnout? I sort of worry that it will. Overall though, this is not a ginormously important system, it's just one of the many things that's coming in patch 6.2. Some other parts of the patch admittedly do feel a little bit sparse, but we'll have to see. Some stuff was recently added to the PTR, I'm just going to let it stew for a day and do some research and really see what's going on in Tanan, now that there have been 1 or 2 improvements. I'll bring you some content on that, but suffice to say, yeah, this system just isn't really enamoring me particularly much. Do let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you next time.